guys in.
If you an aspect,
Yeah.
I didn't do cocaine in Costa Rica, yo. This ain't that shit.
All right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Sparxs Talk Radio on K4HD.com. I'm your host, Danny Brasco. We are here in the building of the #1 cannabis media network. You're live and direct from New York City. I'm here with Landon Dais. Did I say that right?
Landon Dais.
Landon Dais. Quite a name. Before we get into Landon, I'm going to quickly plug our guys at Q Unit, who are so gracious to us that I got to give them a big shout out. Guys, the Q Unit is a premier vaporizer, and it's not your regular old THC pen. The Q Unit instead vapes concentrate, making it a dab rig on the go. It's dabbing without the oily mess that dabbing can be, all disgusting. The concentrate comes in little pods called Q cups. It's almost like those Keurig coffee pods.
Nice.
Pop it right in. Jen, what do you call it? Microdosing?
Yeah, microdosing on the go.
Microdosing on the go, and it tastes good as it does on glass. Put the blowtorch away. You don't need a technician, you don't need a spotter with an iron welding mask. You just pop one of these vapes and you're good to go. Guys, the reason Sparxs supports this device is because it is a safer alternative. The Q Unit's patent technology vaporizes your concentrate in such a way that the heating mechanism never actually comes into direct contact with the metal coil. So your vaping worries about inhaling toxic metals, smoking thickening agents and materials that are illegally used to cut this THC oil, gone. Thing of the past. It's what's getting these kids sick, so instead pick up a safer alternative like the Q Unit. As someone who's also a novice dabber, I very much enjoyed the product. Hits aren't harsh, and you can even adjust the watts in the device to increase or decrease the power of the hit. So 25 to 30 watts is sort of what people are playing with. Our friend and CEO of Unit, Jeff Holdman, what's up, Jeff? Sets his on 27.5 for a nice smooth hit. It's kind of like the sleep number bed for dabbing. It's only $70, but not because it's a crappy device, because it's the goal of the company is to get as many of these products into as many people's hands to cure some illnesses and make a safer alternative. So QUnit.com, people, get it while it's hot. Thanks very much. With all that being said, thanks for sitting through that, Landon.
No, look, listen. I appreciate innovators in this space, and we're all building this plane as it flies, right? So we're all trying to find our niche. We're all trying to make it better. We're trying to make it safer, and that's something from a policy background. I've always told people, like, the legalization of marijuana is actually a public health movement, also, right? If we can take out the bad concentrates and the illicit market where people are cutting and not unregulated market, we can make the marijuana supply chain through this country safer. We're helping everybody. So if you're for or don't smoke marijuana, it is about making a safer America, which is legalizing marijuana, making smart regulation and policy decisions, and then for all of us also to have a good industry where people can have good paying jobs and create opportunities for a lot of people in this country.
Absolutely, man, and this is exactly how I wanted to have you on the show today and get into your perspective. Landon is a man of many talents. He's very seasoned in the marijuana industry.
3 years.
But actually, within those 3 years, it seems like you've done a whole lot of stuff.
So the joke in the industry, especially if you're on the East Coast, right? West Coast is a little bit different. So people have been in the industry for years, but in New York, it's really since only technically 2014.
We're brand
really,
spanking new,
2015. So I have 3+ years of experience. It's really like 20 years of experience. We call it dog years, almost like for every year of cannabis experience you have in the regulated market, you have 7 years of actual experience. Because so many people want to be in this industry, but there's only a very small pot of people that actually have real corporate experience in this industry.
Right. So to gain access to that, you feel like it's not so easy to just jump on it.
It's not, because what happens is everybody, it's kind of like Google and Facebook, how, I have a friend that does HR at Facebook. They get something crazy like 1,000 resumes a day. Like insane number, right?
Oh my goodness,
because everybody wants to work at Facebook. You get stock options, they pay extremely well. So what happens, you have to filter through that. The same thing is for the cannabis industry. So many people are so interested in being in this, but because so few have direct experience in cannabis, except if corporations start going into the illicit market and pulling people who deserve to be in this industry also in the legacy markets, what's happening is you have to take something that's comparable. So okay, you did HR for a liquor company. Well, you might be able to do HR for a cannabis company, or you did PR for a liquor company. So they try to find people in different spaces that can be used in the cannabis space. And that works in some cases, and then it fails miserable in other cases.
I could see that, and I could see poaching people from liquor and distribution places and try to put them in the similar industry,
Right.
just a different product. But like you said, the experience it's a pretty brand new industry, especially here in New York.
Right.
And if you don't have those dog years, you might not know how to put it to the test.
Agreed. It's just a different animal.
100%. And you mentioned something that I actually wanted to get into, so I should properly introduce my man Landon. So Landon is the Chief Strategy Officer, correct? At PIF, P-I-F,
Yes.
Plant Inspired Future.
Absolutely.
And you want to tell us a little bit about PIF?
Yeah, so PIF is an amazing company. Julio Casado, PIF.
I love that.
Plant Inspired Future. Julio's the CEO, New York kid from the Bronx, went to Cornell. Marvis is the COO, a kid from Detroit, went to Cornell. That's where they met. And myself, I'm a New York guy, originally from Harlem, live in the South Bronx. And we came together. They first came together and they brought me in. And we realized that we are one of the few multi-state cannabis companies of color. Two, we want to have more representation in it, not just racial, but class, ethnic background, more women. We believe in true diversity. Three, yes, we care about our bottom line because our investors and our shareholders care about that, but we also have a social justice aspect of our organization because as two African Americans and an Afro-Latino, we understand that stop and frisk that Mayor Bloomberg had in New York. I've been stopped and frisked 4 or 5 times in my life. I know as an attorney what the criminal justice system looks like and how it's negatively impacted certain communities over others, right? In New York, I'll say about blacks and whites and Latinos use marijuana at the same percentage, meaning whites a little bit higher, but blacks and Latinos represent 85% of all arrests. But then on the flip side, we only represent less than 5% of cannabis companies in the country.
Wow.
So there has to be something to fix it, but the reality is everyone's trying to make money, so no one's going to feel sorry for anyone. So we're here grinding, every day, taking my experience in the cannabis world, taking Julio's marketing experience, taking Marvis's experience in real estate and finance. We put that together, and we are just scrapping and clawing to get our day here in the cannabis industry.
Well, good for you guys, and that's something that drew me to you 100%. Is the social justice aspect is something we've discussed on this show, and has been a major topic. Is that the unequal, distribution, or I should say, disproportionate arrests and enforcement of crime to Black and Hispanic and minorities. That, like you said, in fact, white people are consuming at a higher rate than they are. Yet, and legality is changing every day. You're on the front lines of this policy change. Yet, the people that are being incarcerated are still the same minorities, and the people that have access to make money off what used to be illicit are typically white people with access to circles of funding. And I guess I would love to know from your perspective on working this and also your background as a lawyer, is what do you think needs to happen by and large to get minorities involved in these businesses and to also upend this stop and frisk type of unequal disproportionate measure of law enforcement for a crime that will not be a crime in much longer,
Well, it won't be a crime, but it still will be some violations, right? Because you're not going to be able to smoke in public, right? You can't just walk down the street and be able to light a joint or a blunt.
In a playground, sure.
Right.
Not
You
gonna happen.
definitely should be in a playground. Shouldn't be around kids.
Should check yourself, yeah.
So that means in policy, because policy always plays a part in it, you need to have social lounges. You need a place where people can go and use marijuana safely and not worry about using it in a public space or be a nuisance to people who don't want to smell marijuana, because it does have a smell, right? So we do need to be conscious of that. My parents live in Harlem, and a lot of times they have a brownstone and kids sit on their, young adults, I should say, sit on their steps and smoke. And my parents were worried, if we legalize it, I'm going to have it on every step. So I understand that, but what we need to do is create like a hookah lounge, a place where people can go.
Weed speakeasy.
Weed speakeasy and consume. That should be a designated license that should happen across the country, not just in New York, but every place, right? Second, and when it comes to how to get more minorities in there are tremendous minority talent all throughout this country. Young talent, minority, women, whatever you want to call it, LGBTQIA. And what we need to make sure is these companies that are public companies first, the larger cannabis companies, they need to do diversity and inclusion and make sure that they are integrating their C-suite. Because one, it makes good business sense. Because a lot of those communities are the trendsetters on IG and Twitter and social media. And think about how much control hip hop culture has on the cannabis culture.
And it became overnight the biggest music genre worldwide.
Right.
And a common theme is, they pump weed sales all day.
Reggae. What's the the connotation when it comes to Jamaica?
Finally the herb come around.
So we have that. So it makes if I'm running a company, I'm gonna make sure I have a diverse C-suite because it's gonna allow me to tap into markets that you would not know how to tap into. So that makes your company more profitable. because at the end of the day, it's about bottom lines and it's about growth, right? And what's happening, a lot of the big companies are going after the same ones, and then they're going to do the same ran over way to try to get African American and Latino consumers. And because they don't have people in the C-suite and say that's not a good idea.
Yeah, right.
Don't use black market in your commercials. Use illicit market and other connotations and racial biasness. Suddenly now you will have people that are going to be more inclined to buy your product. Two, if your brand does something with social justice, like our brand does, people want environmentally and social justice content from their companies now. We're seeing that.
It's very true.
It's people are now more conscious. It's, all right, yes, I want my money to make money for me, but I also want my money to be going towards good things also.
Right, cause-oriented companies.
Exactly.
So what is it? Tom's, I think, sells
Tom's
a
is
shoe every time they sell a shoe, right?
Tom's is one. You have Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son, doing
Right.
stuff with water in Flint. You know, us in Michigan, ours in Michigan, we're right outside of Flint. We're going to be giving money back to help the Flint projects in Michigan. In New York, you know, we're gonna part of our proceeds are gonna go to something maybe like NDS, the Neighborhood Defense Services of Harlem. We want to make sure that people have representation when it comes to legal defense. You know, we're trying to, you know, yes, we want to make profit. We're gonna be a very profitable company. I believe in my team, and I think we're great. But what's good and how much money do we need when we can also do some good also? You know, I want young men and women from where I'm from look at it and say, this is how we run a business. Not just we only create jobs in our community. Not only do we create a profitable business, but we also give back from where that community, where that company came from, and that's how we spur the next seed, the next clone to do the same thing and paying it forward. And that's what PIF is about. You know, plant inspired future. We are planting the seeds for the future within our community. We're planting the seeds within our industry, and that is what Julio and Marvis and myself have curated at PIF.
That's excellent. I really love the emphasis on social justice reform and how committed your company is to that. It shows in your C-suite yourself, like you just listed off, and it's represented by minority owners. Hopefully that can be a trend that happens in 2020, Cannabis 2.0, where they bring in actually Black and Hispanic executives to help run these companies and give you the perspective of reaching the market in a way that you hadn't before.
And we need to do more too. So right now, yes, you have me, Marvis, and Julio, but you know what? There's we sell tea. Right now is one of our main products.
I wanted to get into that, which is right here displayed for you in front of their lovely hat, this herbal tea. Tell us about your tea.
Yeah, so we have PIF tea. So right in front of you is Balance, which is just a tremendous CBD tea. So currently in New York, we don't, right now there's only 10 THC licenses in New York, but we were able to obtain.
Only 10?
Right, there's only 10 companies.
You guys grabbed
THC.
one of them.
No, so we have the CBD, we have a hemp license. However, we are positioning ourselves for a THC license in New York.
And why are they so hard to come by? Why are they so far
Because
refused?
in 2014, the governor, actually there used to only be 5, and then there was an expansion of 5. And that's hopefully today in his state-to-state speech, he said that legalization is on his agenda, which we're hopefully done in the budget. And our hope is to be one of the first minority companies to own a THC license in New York, because all 10 companies in New York, none of them are minority owned. None of them have a minority CEO. I don't believe any of them even have a minority CFO or COO.
Nobody in the C-suite.
Not
one executive.
I think there is one minority in the C-suite in one of the companies. But the point is, one is just not enough.
It's
right?
not represented.
It's not represented at all. So our tea is our CBD-based tea. So for me, health is a big thing, and CBD has tremendous attributes that can help people. My mom's a 3-time breast cancer survivor, and medical marijuana products helped my mother deal with the pain when it came from radiation and chemo. So the tea is something that helps people calm down, relax, chill. I'm a very hyperactive person, so late at night it's something that I like to drink while I'm doing my end of the day reports, and it really does help me just level out and chill out. You know, you don't get a psychedelic high because it doesn't have THC, but I feel my body feel better. I feel relaxed, and I feel like I can sleep better, which I have an issue with. And we like this. It's fully organic, USDA certified. All of our CBD buds are organic. We have a full COA that demonstrates that we have no pesticides or herbicides on it.
That's big.
Because Plant Inspired Future, we are about having as much organic flower as possible with the least amount of processing.
Good. I mean, and as the industry expands, that's a big concern, I think, is like as more products come out there, it's going to, just like you were talking about supply chains before, how much processing is going to occur and all this from the time that the bud is picked to the time it gets in my cup of tea, right? How much, I'm going to want to go with companies that have minimized the processing on that front.
And that was Julio's vision, and we're executing that vision exactly.
I actually wanted to get your perspective on this. Something you've also talked about on the shows. You used to be, or you still are, general counsel over at Plush Hemp Plush Green Hemp Company.
Yes, so that's another minority company in Missouri, and we put in applications for the Missouri license. But Dre and Monique also are doing hemp, or working on hemp in that area. And then just like us, they're a young minority company trying to just do the application process. There was over 2,000 plus applications, and it's a very slim chance of getting it. So we put our best effort forward in getting it.
Got to throw the Hail Mary.
You got to throw the Hail Mary. But they're also going after the hemp, and their belief is same as ours. Is that listen, we need minority representation in Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City, Missouri is a proud city, and they want to represent for them. And Dre and Monique are awesome people who are business owners there, and we're hoping over the next 2 weeks that they have successfully obtained licenses.
Well, we're hoping that as well. We'll be rooting for you in our corner over here. I wanted to ask you, do you have any ability to distinguish between hemp, CBD, and actual weed THC flower?
No, well, yes and no, because you have to remember CBD is in marijuana, regular marijuana also. Right.
This is something that we were talking about in terms of legality and arrests. Is how can a regular old police officer, when they come do a drug bust or whatever, and they get to your house? We were just reading an article about a guy who got released from prison after 3 months because they found out it was legal hemp, right? It wasn't cross-pollinated with THC or whatever. How are people going to be able to have legal products that are connected to marijuana that aren't psychoactive, and be able to talk to a law officer that they're actually abiding by the law?
So it's actually a twofold issue. So people get drug tested, right? Depending on the lab. Sometimes if they're older labs or haven't updated their testing modules, they only test for cannabinoids. Well, the problem is if you drink CBD, use CBD, or marijuana, cannabinoid is going to come up as a positive.
Right.
So they need a test that just tests for THC. That's more expensive, and as we know, city governments are kind of slow in moving and evolving with the market. So in general, the reality is the federal law is 0.03% no THC is legal federal CBD hemp. The reality is NYPD would have to purchase testing products.
THC breathalyzers of sorts.
Well, there's people working on that, and that's a whole nother issue about safe driving.
Wild.
It is, but it is needed because there is an argument. Yes, you shouldn't drive under the influence. The influence, is it safer probably to drive under the marijuana influence compared to alcohol? Yes, but that doesn't mean it's still a smart thing to do.
Right.
And that's something that we need to do is educate. Is that because people are comfortable with smoking or using marijuana and driving, and that's a bad thing for the industry, especially in today's time when you have autonomous vehicles such as Uber that you can call and get you to where you need to go. We don't want to risk the THC marijuana market because we uneducate people about the dangers of driving while under the influence. So that's something that we really need to push. We need science to go and get breathalyzers, so if someone does get in an accident, outside of just doing a blood draw,
right,
we know if they're intoxicated through THC. And right now, I don't think there's any studies that show that CBD impairs your ability to drive, but it does have a relaxing aspect to it. So if you're tired already and then you have CBD in your system, I can see how that can become a problem.
Right, we just have to broach the subject and tread lightly because I wouldn't take a melatonin before I got behind the wheel.
Right.
Like, there's so many things that you should not do. You have to be at all senses, on point when you're driving. So
just like some people shouldn't take Benadryl. Like Benadryl doesn't impact me. Like it doesn't make me tired. But my dad takes Benadryl. He's done in 5 minutes. But if you did that, if you took Benadryl and drove a car, you would get arrested for that.
Right. I'm under the influence. Right.
Under the influence, or you can say it was Guantan, or it could be reckless endangerment. You took a product knowingly that makes you drowsy, and then you got behind the wheel of a car. Just like if you took a prescription medicine. If you took morphine, if you took anything else, it's the same thing. The issue that I do have is with some of these prohibitionists, though, who want to use that ancillary aspect to say, oh, this is why we shouldn't legalize, right? But the reality is alcohol is the number 1 reason for DUIs. Opioids is the number 2 reason for DUIs, not marijuana. So let's focus on things that's really causing DUI accidents and putting people's in harm's way, and not something that is not nowhere near as dangerous as those things.
And what's interesting that you bring that up is those two things are so prevalent, right? Alcohol and opioids.
Right.
And because we have so much data, we can understand that these are the things that are causing the most DUIs and car accidents because of how absurdly prevalent they are.
But the most amazing thing is, in states that have legalized medical marijuana and adult use, opioid rates are down. In places that have legalized adult use marijuana, alcohol usage is down.
Wow.
So the things that
how are the states taking that?
I mean, remember, it's still so new. We're still talking only 4 to 5 years of data, but the data is. This is what you know about. This is why you know the data is real. Where is the Kronos group Corona in the alcohol industry, Budweiser, where are they investing their money?
Right. They're all involved
They're
in
all
marijuana now.
they are putting money in cannabis in some form. As cops would say, as any lawyer would say, follow the money trail. The money trail will tell you the direction everything is moving in, and there's a reason why alcohol companies are doing as such.
Mm. And they also want to get involved in that 2.0 kind of beverage, infusions kind of game. There's a lot of money to be made in that segment.
But they're doing it more so because they know it's a direct inverse action happening. Alcohol sales are going down, business increasing, and it's literally a direct result, 1-to-1. There's legitimately nothing else that can be thrown in there that shows why else this is happening.
I wanted to get your perspective. We're talking about these policy changes, things that we would like to occur to see the industry move in the right direction. You were the political director of the Marijuana Policy Project.
Yes.
And you were lobbying on the ground for legalization of adult medical use. I wanted to know, from someone that's rubbing shoulders with the politicians of the world and actually they are lobbying, what is it like on the ground? What are attitudes like? And have you had to bring an enormous pair of scissors to cut through red tape as you've gone through it, or have you found that legislation is actually passable and you can get things done?
It's passable, but it's a multi-front war. All right. So you have the prohibitionists. So you have most of the Republicans, even though some of the Republicans in the New York State Senate actually, or their significant others, use marijuana, but from a political reason, they can't technically support it.
Right. That's hush hush.
Or they want to control how it's rolled out. On the Democratic side, you have kind of a two-front war. You have some in the NIMBY areas, not in my backyard. Specifically,
NIMBY?
NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Not in my backyard. Never heard that.
Specifically, suburban Democratic senators. So Yonkers, Westchester, definitely Long Island. The Long Island 6 is a big one. Even though
I like how you rolled the G on that too. Long Island.
Long Island. Even though Senator Kaminsky has been very good at trying to get real movement and getting it done, because he understands that it's prevalent out in Long Island, does make it safer, but he has a lot of cops in Long Island. There's a lot of FDNY, a lot of civil services, very conservative, a little bit more money.
Certainly,
the Catholic Church has a lot of say out in Long Island, right? So he has a population, but he has to balance it out a little bit. The other side of that front, though, is you have a double front war in the Black Caucus and the Latino Caucus. So people would think in polling, when we did polling, actually, there was a higher polling in the white communities than it was in the Black and Latino community.
In terms of favorability towards...
Favorable of legalization. Now, it was still in favor of legalization, but in white community it was actually higher than the Black, because you have to think about it two ways. When you do polling, you go after voters that are more likely to vote. All right, so you call
people that are engaged.
Right, triple prime, double prime. We know how many times you vote, and that's who you target in polling, because we know you're most likely to vote in an election, and that's who electors care about. In the Black and Latino community, who is that? Older women, 55, church-going, somewhat educated, and they are more likely to be conservative, right? Because very religious, whatever. And they see it on their view as a two-front war. They see young people using, they don't want young people using. However, they also saw how police arrested in our communities. So to them, they think they have this double negative perception of marijuana.
And it's stunting your growth, it's stunting your abilities,
to a degree,
and that
you can get arrested,
thrown in the prison
or
cells.
if you have a drug record, you might not be able to get a student loan to go to college. You can't get a civil service job, and because Black and Latino kids are more likely to be arrested, even though white kids use that as the same clip, because of stop and frisk and other broken window policies in those communities by the police. That's more likely to be on your record, which stops you from getting a job or getting into college.
Right. So their perspective of it, or their the way they see it, is sort of like, you already have such an uphill battle. Why are you putting a hand behind your back?
Right. So now, if you look at those communities, specifically the older elected officials like Roxanne Broussard in Brooklyn, who was against legalization. She's a well-known Black politician who's done a lot of tremendous things, but she's just against it. And then you have younger politicians who are for it, such as Tremaine Wright, who's pushing to make sure that there's proper representation of minorities in the industry. Latrice Walker is trying to do the same thing. Fly Connell is trying to do the same thing. Senator Kevin Parker. And the majority leader, People Stokes, she's been pushing for it heavy too. She wants to make sure there's minorities represented in this industry, because we have taken the biggest brunt from a criminal justice standpoint. So you have this multi-war, and then the last part of it is you have the corporate cannabis war versus the advocates. Corporate cannabis, they want the money, right? So they try to corner the market financially. The advocates are like, well, we don't like you. You guys didn't hire any minorities. You guys pushed out minorities. You haven't done anything from criminal justice. We don't even think you should get a adult use license. It should go to people that have been impacted by the war on drugs. And the reality is, both are right. Because the thing is, the hard part is, and this to my last point, what you need from the corporate companies, we need money. There needs to be seed money for these companies. Think about it. These people are coming from impoverished areas. Where are they going to raise $1 million that's going to take to open up a cultivation, manufacturing, or retail site? So part of the deals that they were talking about in legislation was that the 10 companies that are currently have medical marijuana licenses, in order to be grandfathered into the adult use license, you're going to have to pay a fee.
A grandfather clause.
A grandfather fee, whatever
you want to call it. Yeah.
Let's say that fee is $1 million to $5 million. Some said even $10 million. That would then go into a fund, and that fund would then be used to help people from certain communities get low interest or no interest loans, so they can open up their businesses. And I agree with that, because even here we are with 3 guys, well educated, multiple degrees, and we have still struggled to raise the money to a certain level that we need to.
Really, even with your background, being in policy, being at MedMan, having the partnerships,
having 2 licenses is still we claw, but that's business though. You're in tech, you've been in IPOs. It's clawing. If you still got to claw your way up, and then sometimes once you get over that first hump, it gets a lot easier. But as a minority in the space, you don't have the benefit of the doubt. So every I has to be dotted, every T has to be crossed. You can't make any mistakes. Whereas you might, or someone else who doesn't look like me, can make a mistake but still get the benefit of the doubt.
And what's interesting that you mentioned that I had a background in a tech startup. I feel like minority entrepreneurs were often spotlighted and championed in tech, especially because of the maybe nature of the industry, or they're trying to do their own marketing campaign to say, hey, look at the inclusion that we have. It's a very inclusive industry now, or it's beginning to be at least. They're trying to be. Whereas I don't think the marijuana industry, and clearly it's not championing minority owners of businesses, because there's still such a negative connotation around how the crime is enforced on this population.
So it's great that you say that, because certain Congress members and from the Black Caucus, Maxine Waters, Barbara Lee, a couple of them who've been in that scene for a long time, have said something similar, that they failed to do that when the tech boom happened in the 90s. They just didn't see it, right? They didn't put focus on STEM and creating some type of programs to get people in coding camps in urban communities, so that you can get that economic boost from the internet boom, right? So a lot of Black politicians specifically have a lot of pressure on them to deliver in this space. A lot of pressure. And if they don't deliver, if you don't see licenses going to votes from their community, I actually can see this being something where people get voted out. That is why there's a lot. That's why the bill didn't pass last year, because they really are fighting and calling for everything, because I think this is a very specific and emotional issue that people there's a lot of pressure on specifically Black politicians.
And we know cannabis is an issue that actually gets people to the polls. It's a driving issue.
This isn't well, it's going to have impact in 2020, because South Dakota is now going to be on the ballot. There's a possibility Oklahoma, Florida. Nick Henson from MedMed, he's a great dude. Nick is awesome. He's working on that initiative, and if marijuana legalization is on the 2020 ballot for Florida, that might tip the scale of the presidential election in this year.
Especially in swing states, right? Florida.
So,
it's a great point.
But cannabis is becoming it's not. Think about what states have legalized marijuana. Right, it is. Colorado, you have Senator Gardner up for re-election this year. He's a Republican, but Colorado is the marijuana central.
Right, very blue in pockets.
Right.
Yeah.
Alaska, that's a Republican state through and through, but they've legalized. Maine has legalized adult use, even though they don't have a dispensary structure. New Hampshire's kind of an independent state, purple state. Ohio has medical marijuana, talks about adult use. Michigan now has adult use, right? That's a swing state, which Trump won in 2016.
Right, that was neck and neck with Bernie.
Right. Florida is definitely a swing state. I mean, every election is decided by less than 20,000 votes there. So marijuana is a winning. What I do from MPP, working at Ron Campia, and working at MedMen as a policy director, as a political director, it is a winning political argument. And those who cultivate the right argument are going to be able to do a lot of good political work, Republican or Democrat or independent, over the next 2 to 3 years. Because yes, 2020 I think is big. I still don't see federal legalization to anything sooner than 2022. So you have a 3-4 year window where we're going to see a completely different landscape in marijuana policy throughout this country.
Well, during that time, Landon, we got to have you back on the show, because You've obviously lent us some unique perspective here, your legal mind, your business mind. It was really interesting talking about social justice reform with you and what needs to happen in the industry, but by and large society and in politics to get this into the mainstream and upend a lot of the issues that have adversely affected minority communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
I really appreciate you having me on, and I really hope everyone can check out our website. We're at www.livepif.com. That's LIVEPIF.com.
Tell the people.
It's people, please check us out. www.livepif.com. Also on social media, you can follow us on IG and Twitter at livepif, LIVEPIF. And also, you look for information out there. There's great blogs out there, like the cannabisexecutive.com and other, very informative websites out there. Engage people on social media. Leo Bridgewater, Deshauna, Mary Pryor. There's some really amazing people out there doing some amazing things.
Big shout outs from Landon Dais. Thanks so much for being on Sparxs Talk Radio, K4HD.com. We're live here, and we're going to have lots of exciting stuff coming up in the future for you. Landon, thank you for educating people.
Thank you for having me on.
My man. Until the next time.
Thank you.
Great.
Awesome.
Good single.
Good
That
stuff,
was great,
man.
guys. That was awesome. We're just gonna redo the intro. We're just gonna do another intro.
Should I do Canna Watch? I didn't say Canna Watch.
You just visit whatever.
What do you want me to do different?
Whatever you want to call it.
Can you just hit end on
For
that?
sure.
Yeah, come with welcome to